Motivation is unreliable by design. That's not a mindset quote. It's a biological fact. If you've ever felt excited to start something, a routine, a goal, a plan, only to lose all drive days later, this isn't because you're lazy, and it's not because you lack discipline. It's because your brain works differently than you were taught. We grow up believing a story that motivation comes first, that you feel ready, feel inspired, feel driven, and then you act. But real life doesn't work that way. You wait to feel motivated. The feeling doesn't come, or it comes briefly, then disappears. And when it disappears, everything stops. The gym membership goes unused. The notebook stays empty. The plan slowly fades. And the most dangerous thought appears, then disappears. What if motivation isn't something you're supposed to wait for? What if motivation is something your brain only releases after you begin? This video is about that quiet truth, not hype, not discipline speeches, not forcing yourself to push harder, but understanding why motivation vanishes at the exact moment you need it most, and how to work with your brain instead of fighting it. Because the truth is uncomfortable but freeing. Your brain does not care about your goals. It cares about efficiency, energy conservation, immediate reward, and motivation. Motivation is not a reliable fuel source. It's more like a spark. Brief, unstable, triggered by very specific conditions. When those conditions disappear, the spark dies, and most people misinterpret that. They think, I lost motivation, so I should stop. But the brain is actually saying something else. It's saying, there is no reward here yet. That difference matters. Think about how motivation usually shows up. At the beginning, when you imagine a better version of yourself, when the outcome feels exciting, when the future reward is vivid, that feeling is real. But it's not sustainable. Because the moment action becomes repetitive, uncomfortable, or boring, the brain stops releasing motivation, not to sabotage you, but because it hasn't received proof yet. Proof that action leads to reward. So motivation disappears by design. This is where most people fail. They interpret the disappearance as a signal to quit, but it was never a signal to stop. It was a signal to switch systems. There are two systems inside you, and one that executes. The imagination system loves big goals. The execution system only responds to immediate feedback. And here's the mistake we're all taught. We try to use imagination fuel for execution work. It doesn't last. That's why motivation fades the moment consistency is required. That's why you start strong and quit fast. And that's why the people who succeed aren't more motivated. They're operating on a different rule entirely. A rule that sounds simple but feels backwards. They don't wait for motivation to act. They act in a way that creates motivation. This video will show you how that works, not as advice, but as brain logic. We'll break down why motivation shows up late, why it disappears early, and how to design your actions so motivation becomes a byproduct, not a requirement. If you've ever said, I just can't stay consistent, I lose motivation too fast, I start strong but never finish, this isn't a flaw. It's a misunderstanding. And once you see it clearly, something shifts. In the next section, we'll expose the motivation myth you were taught and why believing it quietly sabotages your effort. Here's the myth most people live by. Motivation creates action. It sounds reasonable. It feels intuitive. And it quietly ruins consistency. Because when you believe this, you structure your life around waiting. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel inspired. Waiting for the right moment. And when that feeling isn't there, you don't move. You assume something is missing, but look at the pattern. You start something new. The first day feels exciting. The second day still feels okay. By day 5, the feeling is gone. Nothing dramatic happened. The goal didn't change. You didn't suddenly decide to quit. The motivation just evaporated. This is where people turn on themselves. I've been to DR. I've been consistent. I have no discipline. I always give up. But notice something important. The drop in motivation happens after novelty disappears. After the brain has seen this activity once already, that timing matters. Because novelty is a shortcut to dopamine. New plans feel good, not because they're effective, but because they're new. Your brain loves anticipation. The idea of progress, the fantasy of results, the mental image of future success, but execution is different. Execution is slow, repetitive, unimpressive, and it doesn't produce the same chemical response. So the brain does what it always does. It shifts attention away. It withdraws motivation. Not because the task is bad. You feel the absence of motivation as a personal failure. You think something inside you broke. But nothing broke. You simply crossed the line where imagination ends and repetition begins. And repetition is where the brain becomes skeptical. It asks one silent question: is this worth the energy? Until it gets an answer, it holds back motivation. That's why forcing yourself doesn't work long term. You can push for a day, maybe a week, but willpower burns fast when it's unsupported. So people fall into cycles. They wait for motivation. They get a burst. They start strong. They lose momentum. They stop. They wait again. Each cycle reinforces the belief, I can't stay consistent. But consistency was never the issue. Timing was. You were expecting motivation at the wrong moment. Motivation is not designed to lead. It's designed to respond. That's the misunderstanding. Your brain releases motivation when it senses progress, not when you ask for it. And progress to the brain is not big results. It's proof, small wins, completed actions, evidence that effort leads somewhere. Until that proof exists, the brain stays cautious. It withholds fuel. That's not cruelty, that's efficiency. The brain's job is to avoid wasting energy, so it waits. And most people quit right before the proof appears. They stop during the quiet phase, the phase with no excitement, no praise, no visible payoff. This is why advice like just stay motivated fails. It asks the brain to do something it doesn't do naturally. It asks it to release dopamine without a reason. And the brain doesn't work on promises, it works on feedback. This is why motivation feels unreliable, because it was never meant to be your engine. It's meant to be your echo. In the next section, we'll go deeper into the brain mechanics behind this, not with jargon, but with a clear explanation of dopamine timing and why motivation arrives late. To understand motivation, you have to understand timing, not personality, not mindset, timing. Inside your brain, motivation is tied to one main chemical loop, dopamine. But here's the part most people get wrong. Dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of anticipation. It spikes before a reward, not after. That's why planning feels exciting, why imagining success feels energizing, why starting something new feels powerful. Your brain is predicting a reward. It's saying, prepare energy. The moment reality doesn't match the fantasy, the brain adjusts. You start the habit. The work is slow. The results are invisible. So the brain updates its prediction. Reward unclear. And when reward is unclear, dopamine drops. This is the exact moment people say, I lost motivation. But motivation didn't disappear randomly. It was withdrawn. Because the brain didn't see confirmation yet. This is called dopamine timing mismatch. The reward you expect is far in the future. But the brain evolved for immediate environments. In the wild, effort and reward were close together. You hunt, you eat, you run, you survive. Modern goals break this system. You work for weeks, months, years, with no immediate signal that it's working. So the brain hesitates. It holds dopamine back, not because it hates you, but because it's unsure. This is why motivation shows up strongest at the beginning. At the start, anticipation is high. The brain imagines progress without evidence. But once action begins, imagination must be replaced by feedback. And if feedback is missing, motivation fades. Here's the crucial insight. Dopamine is released by progress signals, not effort itself. The brain doesn't reward trying. It rewards movement toward a reward it can detect. Continued. But if the brain can't see progress, it assumes there is none. So it conserves energy. This is why hard work alone doesn't motivate, and why people burn out doing the right things the wrong way. They're asking the brain to stay energized without proof. But the brain doesn't run on belief. It runs on data, and early-stage goals provide very little data, so motivation feels unstable. This also explains something subtle. Why scrolling feels motivating, why distractions feel easier. Because they provide instant feedback. Swipe, new content, tap, new stimulus. The brain loves clear cause and effect. Work doesn't give that immediately. Distraction does. So motivation shifts, not because distraction is better, but because it's clearer. This is why discipline advice fails. It tells you to overpower biology. You need to design around it. You need to give the brain what it's waiting for. Proof. And here's the twist. Once proof appears, even small proof, motivation comes back. Not as hype, but as momentum. Which kid consistent say something strange? I don't rely on motivation anymore. It just shows up. That's not luck, that's timing. They stopped waiting for motivation first. They acted in a way that created feedback, and the brain responded. In the next section, we'll turn this into something practical. A simple rule that flips motivation from unreliable to automatic. Here's the rule that changes how motivation works. Action comes first. Motivation follows, not eventually, not magically, biologically. But this only works if the action is designed correctly. Most people here just take action and fail because they take too much action. They aim big, they push hard, they demand consistency immediately, and the brain resists. The mind hack is not forcing action, it's designing friction-free starts. Your brain doesn't resist effort. It resists uncertain effort. So the goal is not to motivate yourself to finish. The goal is to make starting so easy, the brain doesn't object. This is where motivation actually begins. Not with ambition, with permission. Permission for the brain to say, this doesn't cost much energy. Here's how it works. The brain asks one question before releasing dopamine. Is this safe to begin? If the task feels large, vague, or demanding, the answer is no. But if the task feels small, clear, and contained, the brain relaxes. It allows movement, and once movement starts, feedback appears. Feedback creates dopamine. Dopamine creates motivation. This is the loop. So instead of asking, how do I stay motivated? Ask, how do I make starting almost effortless? This is where the show up rule comes in. The rule is simple. You don't commit to outcomes. You don't commit to intensity. You commit to showing up. You don't commit to intensity. You commit to showing up. Paragraph. That's it. The brain hears this and says, that's manageable, so it allows action. And here's the hidden power. Once you start, stopping feels harder than continuing, because now dopamine has something to work with. Progress, even micro progress. You're no longer asking the brain to imagine a reward. You're showing it one. This is why motivation suddenly appears after you begin. You didn't summon it, you triggered it. Another key insight. Motivation is not global. You don't need to feel motivated about the whole task. You only need enough dopamine to start the next step. So stop asking yourself, do I feel like doing this today? Ask, can I do the first 30 seconds? That's a different question. And the brain answers it differently. This removes emotional negotiation. You're not waiting to feel ready. You're acting before the brain has time to argue. This is not discipline, it's timing. And over time, something interesting happens. The brain begins to associate the task with completion, not struggle. The next time you approach the task, dopamine rises sooner. Motivation arrives earlier, because the brain expects success. This is how habits form naturally, not through force, through predictable feedback. The brain learns, when I start this, something finishes. In the next section, we'll look at how this plays out in real life, not theory. Actual moments where people think motivation is missing when it's just misplaced. Let's make this real. Picture someone trying to build a simple habit: working out. Day one starts strong. They imagine progress. They picture a better version of themselves. They go hard. An hour workout, sweat, pain. The brain releases dopamine because the idea of reward is vivid. Day 2 feels heavier. Day 3 feels worse. By day 5, motivation is gone. I lost motivation, but what actually happened? The brain ran a calculation. High effort, low immediate reward, unclear payoff. So it stopped supplying fuel. Now imagine a different approach. Same person, same goal. But the rule is different. Wait, cough, put on workout clothes, do 5 minutes, leave. That's it. The first day feels almost too easy, but something important happens. The task completes. The brain receives a signal, effort ended successfully. That's feedback. The next day, the brain is less resistant because it remembers completion, not exhaustion. 5 minutes becomes 10, not because of discipline, but because once started, stopping feels unnatural. Now scale this to work, writing, studying, learning. Most people wait to feel motivated to begin. So they sit, they think, they scroll, they plan. They burn mental energy before action even starts. By the time they try, motivation is already gone. Now flip it. They commit to opening the document. 1 sentence, that's the whole goal. No pressure to continue. The brain allows it. 1 sentence turns into a paragraph, and often enough is all the brain needs to build expectation. This works because the brain tracks patterns, not intentions. It doesn't care what you want to do. It cares what usually happens. So if starting usually leads to overwhelm, the brain resists starting. If starting usually leads to completion, the brain cooperates. This is why people say, once I start, I'm fine. That's not a coincidence. That's dopamine timing aligning with action. Another example. Someone wants to read more. They fail. Why? Because the brain hears long effort, no clear reward. Now change the rule. Read 1 page. 1. Lowering the bar increases consistency. Consistency increases feedback. Feedback creates motivation, not the other way around. Most people try to motivate themselves into consistency. But consistency is what motivates the brain. Once you understand this, self-blame fades. You stop asking, why can't I stick to things? And start asking, how can I design a better start? We'll make one final mental shift. Way to think about motivation that removes pressure completely. Type continue to generate the next section. Section 6. Mental shift reframe. Here's the shift that changes your relationship with motivation forever. Motivation is not a requirement. It's feedback. Once you see motivation as feedback, not fuel, the pressure disappears. You stop chasing a feeling. You stop waiting. You stop negotiating with your mood because you understand something most people never do. Motivation doesn't decide whether you act. Your actions decide whether motivation shows up. This reframes everything. When motivation is high, it doesn't mean you're strong. When it's low, it doesn't mean you're weak. It just means your brain hasn't seen enough proof yet. And proof only comes from movement. Small movement. Repeatable movement. This removes guilt. You no longer say, I should feel more motivated. You say, my brain hasn't been shown enough evidence. That's a solvable problem. It also removes urgency. You don't need to feel inspired today. You just need to show up long enough to send a signal. This changes how effort feels. Effort becomes lighter, not because the work changed, but because the expectation did. You're no longer trying to finish something, you're just trying to begin, and beginnings are easier than endings. This shift also protects you from burnout. They think, I need to use this feeling before it disappears. So they push too hard. That creates exhaustion. And exhaustion teaches the brain to avoid the task next time. But when you see motivation as feedback, you don't chase spikes, and the brain likes predictability. It trusts it. Trust is what brings motivation back faster next time. This is why the most consistent people don't look intense. They look calm. They're not fighting themselves. They've stopped expecting motivation to lead. They've let it follow. And here's the quiet truth. Once you stop relying on motivation, you stop losing it. Because you're no longer depending on something that was never meant to be stable. You're working with the brain's natural timing. Action first. Feedback second. In the final section, we'll bring this together, not with hype, but with one thought to carry with you the next time motivation disappears. Motivation was never supposed to stay. It was meant to respond. Problem isn't that motivation disappears. Motivation disappears. The problem is that we were taught to depend on it. Once you see that, the struggle softens. You stop asking, why don't I feel like doing this? And start asking, what's the smallest action I can take right now? That question changes the direction of your day, because action doesn't need belief. It doesn't need confidence. It doesn't need a mood. It just needs permission. And permission is easier than motivation. When you act without waiting to feel ready, something subtle happens. Your brain watches. It takes notes. It learns, this is safe. This ends. This leads somewhere. And slowly, motivation returns. Not as a burst, but as a quiet willingness. The kind that lasts. This ends the kind that lasts. So the next time motivation disappears, don't panic. Just begin. One small action. Let that be enough. Because the brain doesn't follow promises. It follows patterns. And the pattern you repeat will shape how motivated you feel. In the end, the truth is simple. Motivation is unreliable by design. But action is not. Choose the one that stays. One stays the one that stays. And notice what changes when you stop waiting.